Thank you for the wonderful performances. How about one more round of applause for our young performers? I'm Uma. I'm part of the Sunaad team, and I'm just taking a few minutes to tell all of you like what Sunaad as a platform is. Some of you have already heard this, like having come to our concerts before. But this was put together a year and a half ago. Shobna and Padmana are the key members of it, along with Vartika, Manju, and some of them who are not here, Ajit, Sharada, and Sri couldn't be here. So we came together to primarily give this an opportunity for all the young performers, student performers, to get an actual experience of performing live along with accompanists, the practice and the performance that brings to that it takes to bring something to you. We have had wonderful audiences and wonderful hosts who are opening up their homes. So thank you so much. And for next year, if you haven't noticed the calendar on the wall, we have the next year's calendar posted, starting from February 10th. Every 2 months we have this performance. February 10th is in San Ramon with Jayanti Sahasrabuddheji as the guest performer, and at Shesha Prasad and Sugnaji's home. Would love to see you all there. And if there's anybody who's interested in getting more into organizing, as well as we are looking for hosts for the rest of the 4 performances next year. So please get in touch with any of us, and would love to. That I can see that Vikas is already setting the tabla up, and I know all of you are impatiently waiting for the guest performer to start. Because you may not know this, but I've been following you around for a while. Since you're a student, at least in Stanford. First time I met him, part of organizing Speak McKay. And it was really heartwarming, not just the performance, but the conversation after that, such a unassuming, grounded, and so dedicated. So I'm so happy to be able to introduce our guest performer here, Vikas Yendluri. Thank you, Vikas. And you have inspired several people to take more interest in tabla, including my son, who was very disappointed that he couldn't be here, but we'll be watching the video very soon. Because, as I mentioned, was a student at Stanford, and he has been studying with Ashad Syed for many, many years, since age of 5. He has also studied with Ustad Zakir Hussain, and he has accompanied some of the illustrious artists, including Pandit Rajiv Taranad, Ustad Shahid Parvez, and Pandit Parthacharya. Apart from music, he's also a software engineer. So many of us in the high-tech field who may be wondering how to balance all these things, may have some questions, and young ones especially, how do you grow up, learning to balance different things and keeping up your interest. He will be joined shortly by Tejas, who is on his way. But because nothing stops him, he's going to start the performance. Once again, thank you very much. Yeah.
How's everybody doing? Okay, good. They just told me he'll be here at 11:11, so that's 3 minutes from now. So if he's not here, we can all get him in trouble. But he'll be here shortly. Well, first of all, I'm very humbled to be here, and that Sunaad invited me to come. Like Shobana Auntie said, I've known her since I was very little, and she's always been a big encouragement to me. So it means a lot, and everyone who put this together. So thank you. Also, before I forget, I think that everyone who performed today deserves another round of applause. For one thing, it takes a lot of guts to come up here and, be vulnerable and perform in front of everyone. But another thing my guru once told me when I was little is that, you can practice at home as much as you want, but when you get on stage, everything's going to go wrong anyway. So as much as you can practice on stage, Meaning don't practice in front of us, but if you practice performing on stage, then, it's a good thing. And the more you do it, the more you become comfortable. So it's also a great thing that, Sunaad does this, because, without opportunities like this, many of us wouldn't, get to practice performance, which, like I said, is completely different. So that's a very good thing. What else? Of course, thanks to our gurus. It's great that Ashwini ji is here. A round of applause for her too. And of course, I'm always thankful to my guru, Arshad ji, and my hero, Ustad Zakir Hussain. So, here's a question for everybody. When you listen to Indian classical music, who do you like to listen to? Just shout out. Okay, good. So live, yeah. What about like when you're at home, or you're on YouTube or Spotify or whatever? I heard Jitendra Abhisheki ji somewhere back there. Okay, so I heard something up here. Okay, that's great. Okay, that's great. Keep it going. This entire area is very silent. Sorry? Oh, perfect. That's great. That's also great. All great choices so far. Anybody else? There's no wrong answers here. Okay, good. That's great. Perfect. So one of the most important things we can do as students of music is learn how to listen to music, right? Without that, well, let me put it this way. When you listen to music and you listen to everybody, right? Not just, one or two people, but everybody. You're inspired with new ideas. It opens your eyes to new things about the music that you never knew before, right? So listening to music is extremely important. But one of the pitfalls we run into when we listen to music is we focus on the part that we can relate to, right? And I'm guilty of this, right? If you're a tabla player and there's a tabla player on stage, you're watching their hand and you're watching everything they're doing and you're waiting for them to, rip a solo or whatever, right? And if you're a vocalist or instrumentalist, maybe you're listening primarily to what the main artist is doing, and you'll listen to the tabla player if they're taking a solo, or the harmonium player if they're taking a solo or whatever. But what I mean to say is you haven't, completely blocked off those other people that are performing, but your focus is on the thing that you can relate to, right? Does anybody feel that way when they listen to music? Is that just me? Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone. But one of the most important things I learned from my guru is if you're listening to music, you have to listen to everything together. Only then do you really understand what's going on, right? Oh, hey. Everybody, this is Tejas. Huh? Don't worry. Come on in. Tejas is my guru bhai. He's a very fine tabla player himself, but for today we have him on harmonium. Anyways, so we were talking about listening to everything together, right? So what I mean by that is, okay, I'll give him a minute to set up. You need a hand? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what were we talking about? Who remembers? Exactly, listening to everything together. I'm glad you guys are listening. Good. So what I mean by that is, you're listening to a recording or a concert and you're thinking about, why did that musician do, that thing in that concert at that time? But then you're listening to, maybe the tabla player, the harmonium player, or whatever. Why did they react to what that person just did in that way at that time, right? So you have to listen to everything together, right? If you can do that, it's really useful for 3 reasons. One, when you're performing yourself, you'll start cooperating with your whole team on stage in ways that you never had to practice, right? It kind of becomes like a knowledge that's just inside of you, right? Because of the studying you did while you were listening, right? So that's important reason number 1, right? The important reasons I'll give you number 2 and 3 are kind of biased towards tabla players because that's what I know, right? Number 2 is if you're a tabla player and you want to accompany someone properly, unless you are listening to everything they're doing very acutely and thinking about what your contribution can be to make everything fit together, I mean, that is the most important thing you can do as a tabla accompanist, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is if you're playing with a tabla accompanist and you're not understanding what they're doing and how what they're thinking is fitting into what you're trying to do, then you're not going to be able to leverage what they're doing either, right? So those are the 3 reasons why it's very important to listen and understand what everyone on stage is trying to do, right? Because my focus is tabla, my goal today will be to help all of us kind of understand what is a tabla player trying to do when they're playing. How are they treating their compositions? How are they treating the tayka? Things like that. And hopefully that makes us, all better listeners or able to understand what the tabla player is doing, right? In the old days, it was kind of a my turn, your turn kind of thing, right? The main singer or instrumentalist sings, they need a chai break. It's sitting right there looking at them. So, they turn to the tabla player, say, take a solo, right? They take a few sips, tabla players, playing whatever they had practiced the day before, had no relation to anything. And then, the singer's done with their chai, looks at the tabla player, says, your time's up, hurry up, final tihai now. And then, tabla player finishes his tihai, gets his claps, and they move on, right? So kind of independent. But those days are over, right? The audience expects interaction. They expect everything to kind of be a cohesive story, and that's a good thing for the music. It makes everyone better. So that's why this is also important. So anyways, next question. What do you all know about tabla? You. Yeah, very good. What else? Go on. That's also very true. No wrong answers. Keep going. What are they? Very good. Wait, so Kinar, Maidan, and what was the third one? Very good. Syai. Okay, great. What about the language of tabla? Does anyone know? I want to keep picking you. Okay, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But tal everyone has to kind of work with, right? Not just the tabla players, but that's good. What about like the bowls of tabla? Go ahead. Anything else? Very good. Are you a tabla player? Okay, great. Exactly, right? So tabla has its notes or its bowls, right? Like he just mentioned, right? So you have na, tete, ge, ka, tun, tirikita takata, right? So these are the basic words of tabla, just like you have the swars of music, right? If you string them together, you start getting phrases, right? You don't just play one thing and leave it there, right? You start forming phrases or sentences, right? So, right? Just a short phrase, right? If you take those phrases together, you get compositions, right? So just like all the vocalists have their bandishes, all the instrumentalists have their guts, we tabla players have our own compositions. But there are many different types of compositions. They're much performed perhaps for shorter than, what a singer would do one composition for 50 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Not like that, much shorter, right? But depending on the type of composition, you play with it a little differently. So this is where we come back to my original point. If you can understand the different types of compositions on a tabla and how they are developed, then you can start to understand what the tabla player is thinking and what they're trying to do, what their contribution is to the concert you all are doing together, right? Okay, we'll cover 3 types of compositions, okay? First is tayka, which maybe is a composition, maybe is not, but let's treat it as one. The second is the raela, and then the third is the qaeda, right? And all the tabla players here know what all those things are, but so please forgive me if I'm telling you things you already know. So first, tayka. Is everybody familiar with what tayka is? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of nods. You heard plenty of tayka today. Excellent tayka, right? But the tayka is a manifestation of the tal, right? But when the tabla player is playing tayka, the most important thing you can do is to give it a shape, right? So if you keep the tayka flat, like for instance, if I played tayka like, right? It doesn't sound good, right? I basically sound like a tabla machine, right? And there's no point to that, right? So that's not what we do, right? If you listen to a good tayka, what I mean by a shape is this, right? So if I were to recite it, and if I were to, kind of trace the chart of the tayka with my hand, right? Bear with me for a second, right? I would look at it as da din din na din din na tin tin na ti din din na da din din na din din na tin tin na ti din din na da, right? So around the Kali section, there's a little build-up in energy, but the point is after that, you're kind of bringing it back to some, right? There's that roll, right? So that's what I mean by the shape of the tayka, right? So if you're listening to a tabla accompanist and they're accompanying you, you want to be listening for what that shape is, right? If they're giving you a good shape of the tayka, if you've lost the sum, you're in the middle of some tan and you have no idea where you are, if you find that shape, it'll help you drive you back to sum, right? Another thing is the bandishes that you all sing usually have a shape of their own already, right? They're designed for the tal that they're in, but bring some emphasis to the tal. They have its own, the bandish has its own shape, right? So if your tabla player is really good, then what they'll be doing also is adjusting the tayka to give it that shape of your composition, right? So if you want to know if the tabla player is doing a good job giving you tayka, that's what you're listening for. And if you're a tabla player giving tayka, that's what you're trying to do. Okay, any questions about that? Either I'm crystal clear or no one wants to ask questions. Okay, good. Number 2 is the raela, right? So raela is a type of tabla composition that is meant to be played fast and to have an even tone, right? So best way to think about this is when you go on a train, what is the sound that the train makes? Yeah. Wait, what are you doing? Exactly, right? So it's even, right? You hear the track, it comes at an even pace, right? It's very fast once the train hits top speed, right? So if you take the word train and take a synonym of it, rail, then some people say that's where the word raela came from, right? Because it's supposed to indicate that evenness and fastness. So when a tabla player is playing a raela, the way you listen to it is that, they aren't trying to, the main thing that they're trying to do is keep up the flow, right? They may change sounds. In fact, that's the majority of what they're trying to do with that composition. Put this sound in, take that sound out, switch things around. I'll show you what I mean in a second. But that's primarily what they're doing, is maintaining that flow and playing with sound. So if you're hearing a tabla player and they're, all of a sudden cruise control at top speed, that's what you should listen for. All right? Here's an example of a raela based on, if you took teen tal and kind of cut it in half, that's what this raela is based out of. All right? So just short example, right? There isn't much complicated stuff going on. It's just, brrr. But you're flipping the sounds around, right? That's all that it is. So that's raela. Okay, any questions about raela? Wow, okay. Number 3, qaeda. Anyone know what qaeda means? Go ahead. Exactly. That's a textbook definition. Good job. Actually, this morning I was looking this up, and there's apparently qaeda in Farsi or Persian means prison. Yeah. But don't worry, it's not a scary thing. It's just another composition. So, qaeda is a more rules-oriented composition. That's why it means rule. But forget the rules. Think of it like poetry, right? So you start with a theme. That theme is a couplet. Just like you guys know what a couplet is, right? You learn all about it in school or whatever. So it's a couplet. It rhymes. You all know what rhyming means, right? Okay, good. So it's a couplet that rhymes, and that's your theme. And then what you're doing from there is just like a poet, plays with the words, right? A tabla player is taking that theme and playing with all the words of that theme, just like a poet would. They make all of these beautiful variations, and then when they're done, they put their final signature, their final tihai, and that composition is done, right? So that's the way that works. So, example of a qaeda. This is a qaeda from Punjab, probably an old composition. When we're students, we all learn this one, but it goes like this. So, da tete da gena tete da gena tinna kena ta tete ta gena tete da gena dinna gena. That's it. That's our theme. Did you all see how it rhymed? Yeah, and it's 2 lines, right? The bhari or the khali, right? Da tete da gena tinna kena ta tete ta gena tete da gena dinna gena. Right? 2 rhyming portions. Okay, so if you're a tabla player and you're trying to play with that, then you think about what are the different things I can manipulate out of that composition to expose its beauty, right? And in more concrete terms, just think like a poet would, right? So one of the techniques that a poet might use if they were writing English poetry is they would use repetition, right? They would repeat something and make sure that it's emphasized, right? So example of that, you can do the same thing on tabla. If you have the theme, I'll recite you a theme and then the variation that uses repetition, right? Da tete da gena tete da gena tinna kena ta tete da gena tete da gena dinna gena da tete da gena da da tete da gena da da tete da gena tete da gena dinna kena ta ta gena ta ta tete da gena da da tete da gena dinna gena, right? What did I emphasize? Exactly, right? I got loud and it came twice in a row and whatever, right? But that's an example of what you could do just with that theme, right? Notice I didn't add any phrases. I just used all the phrases that were in that theme. If I did da tete da gena tinna kena kirta 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 da ti da ge dinna gena, that's garbage. Don't do that, right? I introduce some random phrase. It makes no sense in there. You can't do that. So those are the rules. Another example of what you could do with a variation. I could take, you could move things around, just like a poet would move words around, right? So if I have da tete da gena tinna kena, right? So I have this, and this, and I'll do that and leave that one right there. So da tete da gena tinna kena tete da gena da tete da gena dinna gena. Right? I just move some things around, but it sounds like a completely different thing, right? So that's your variation. Da tete da gena tinna kena tete da gena da tete da gena tinna kena da tete da gena tinna kena tete da gena da tete da gena. Ran out of breath. Okay. What else could you do? You could take the ideas in that couplet and you could extend it and add, something that still fits that theme but is a slightly new idea, but not so new that it's, that you reject it, right? Da tete dagena tete dagena tenaka tete da tete dagena tete dagena tenakena ta tete dagena tete dagena tenaka tete da tete dagena tete dagena tenagena. Right? Tete da dagena wasn't anywhere in the original composition, but it makes sense, right? As the tabla player poet for today, I decided to make that the variation, right? So you kind of do things like that. You do your final tiha and you're done. Right. Da tete dagena tete dagena tenaka tete da tete dagena tete dagena tenaka tete da tete 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 daga tete da tete 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 daga tete da tete 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 da. And that's it. That's your qaeda. I took some theme, I played around with it like a poet would. I, signed it off with my tiha and I'm done. Does that make sense? This is probably the most, complicated of the three we covered, but it's the old masters used to teach qaidas because they were a way to convey the grammar of tabla and how to work with the poetry. When you were a student, in 1800 whatever, learning tabla, this is how you learned. And now they're like a prime composition that we play in solos and whatever, right? So I'll play this qaida just really slowly, string it together so you can all hear what that's like, okay? Same thing. Ta tete dage na tete dage na tinna ke da ta tete dage na tete dage. So simple example. I just theme a variation or two, sign it off, you're done. Right? Okay. So now, tying this back to my original point, right? We talked about the tayka and the shape of the tayka. We talked about the raela and the sound that you play with when you play a raela. And then we talked about the qaeda and the poetry of the qaeda when you're playing with that as a tabla player. Right? So now, how does this tie back to, how to listen to your accompanist or what you're doing as an accompanist? Right? If you're the main artist and you're, performing and the tabla player does a little riff, the things then that you're thinking about are they giving like some shape to the tayka that's beautiful right there, or matches the composition right there, or what, my tan or what I was doing right there, right? That's what you're listening for with that. Say you're singing or you're playing sitar or whatever, and you hit top speed and you do something crazy and everybody's clapping. Maybe you're listening for is a tabla player responding with some raela, that matches, what you were trying to do at the time, but maybe brings a new twist, right? Maybe you're playing with sound and the tabla player is also showing what can they do with this sound. Or maybe, what you're doing is super lyrical or super poetic, and the tabla player is responding in their way with some qaeda or some other composition and exploiting that poetry and the techniques of tabla poetry I kind of talked about, right? So that's what you're listening for. Because if your tabla player is a good accompanist, that's what they'll be doing. And if you're a good listener, that's what you'll be able to see. I like to think that, the reason that, when you're playing, you give the tabla player a solo or the harmonium player a solo is not just to appease them, right? Just so you're not giving it to them just so they play with you again. You're giving it to them because hopefully they are listening to you and seeing how everything fits together and presenting something that has your idea and, is a little twist on it, and then they're inspiring you back, right? That's really the purpose, right? You're playing with these musicians, you're giving them a little room to breathe, and they're showing how they can inspire you. But you can only get that inspiration if you know how to listen to them and they know how to listen to you, right? So everything must fit together. So learn how to listen to everything all at once, not just focus on, the thing you relate to, but how to listen to everything. And this is just, how to listen to, what the tabla player is doing. But if you're a tabla player, you should be studying what vocal music is like and what instrumental music is like, and, vice versa. So that's all. Let's see, how are we doing? Okay, great. I'll play a quick solo, and just try to listen for, some of the things I just talked about. When am I playing with sound? What am I doing with the tayka? If I present a theme of some composition, like what kind of poetry is happening with that? And just try to listen for that. All right? Cool. composition I haven't talked about, which is the fixed compositions of tabla. Some people call them guts or tukras or chakradars or bowls or parans, but it's kind of a you say tomato, I say tomato kind of thing. Right? It's all the same name. But these are compositions that were composed by the masters long ago. They're kind of passed down from teacher, student. And the point is, you don't improvise these or work with these as much as you're trying to relay the beauty of that original composition. So very short. But that's kind of what you do in this section of a tabla. Composition of my teacher. Chakradar, meaning you play it 3 times, it's kind of like a big D high, and then it'll come to sound. Chakradar.